swearing, violence, Rock and Austin, the evil Mr. McMahon. These were all staples in the WWF between 1997 and 2001, which is often regarded as the best time period to be a wrestling fan. Stay tuned to find out why the Attitude Era is the greatest in WWE history. Now, in order for something new to emerge, something old must give way. For years, the realm of professional wrestling was stuck in a never-ending loop of gimmicks that could rival a Saturday morning cartoon. We're talking about Repo Men, Mounties, and cartoonish superheroes. Vince McMahon did have a vision for a younger guard, what he called a youth movement, and in doing so would push stars like Hulk Hogan and Randy the Macho Man Savage off to the side to make way for young talent. The problem was, McMahon's vision lacked, well, vision. He was just shuffling the same deck of cards, hoping for a different outcome. As a result, the product suffered greatly, and profits took a nosedive. WCW, on the other hand, were riding high. They began to garner significant mainstream attention by going head-to-head with WWF's Raw in the coveted Monday night time slot. Week after week, Nitro seemed unbeatable. Determined to reclaim their dominance, the WWF underwent a remarkable transformation, shifting from a family-friendly product to a daring and edgier spectacle. Matches became shorter, backstage vignettes became more prevalent, and unexpected twists and turns kept viewers on the edge of their seats. Meanwhile, Vince used real-life controversies, such as the infamous Montreal Screwjob incident, to shape his on-screen character, Mr. McMahon. Now, some say the Attitude Era started with Stone Cold Steve Austin's epic Austin 316 promo at the 1996 King of the Ring. Others point to WrestleMania 14, where the Austin era truly took off, or the Pillman's Got a Gun segment from the same year. Heck, some even argue it began with Goldust's debut in '95. And by some, I mean only Vince Russo. It's a debate that could go on forever. And the reason the time frame of this is important is because we need to know what it is exactly that people are praising. When you talk to people about the Attitude Era, it's usually the stars that they bring up, and it makes sense. The roster depth the WWF had between '97 up until 2001 was insane. We're talking Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Mankind, Undertaker, Kane, Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, Chyna, Triple H, the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian. The list could go on for days. But the point is, these larger-than-life personas brought the heat and kept us glued to our screens. Even when some stars were cycling out, there was always a fresh crop ready to take their place. And it was this star power that made Monday Night Raw must-see TV. You couldn't turn your eyes away because you never knew what insanity awaited you. Remember that mind-blowing 21-minute segment with The Rock and Mankind? Yeah, it was practically pointless, but it became the highest-rated moment of the entire Attitude Era. Another thing that made the era so compelling were the characters that these wrestlers portrayed. The top babyface of the company was a beer-chugging, trash-talking redneck who loved flipping the bird. And then you had The Rock, who called himself the People's Champion one minute, but told the crowd to shut up and chant with him the next. The number one faction, DX, broke every rule in the book and made lewd hand gestures like it was their day job. And guess what? The fans ate it up like a bag of popcorn. They couldn't get enough. And let's not forget about the ultimate villain, Vince McMahon himself. No one was simply good or bad. Take Mankind, for example. He was supposed to be a good guy who spent his off hours talking to himself or a socket puppet in some creepy basement. And it worked. You never knew who would attack whom, when, or even why. It was a mind-boggling mystery, and it made you think. The depth of the Attitude Era characters was on another level. They made you question what you were witnessing, and that's what made it legendary. And the storylines. Oh boy, Austin clashing with McMahon, The Rock turning heel and becoming the corporate champion, Triple H marrying Stephanie McMahon, and then betraying dear old dad to form the McMahon-Helmsley regime, Mick Foley as the commissioner, the debut of Kane, the epic tag team feud between the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardy Boys. Let's not forget the China and Eddie Guerrero stuff, the hardcore 24/7 madness, and the menacing corporate ministry. There was always something crazy happening. Back then, Raw knew how to keep you hooked. You always had a good idea of what was coming up next week. Nowadays, it's like a mystery box. And the stars? They were built up to be big deals. You wouldn't catch Austin or The Rock in the first segment unless something major was going down. The big guns went on last, and you stuck around because the show was that damn fun. And let's not forget the pay-per-view events. Back then, each one was a grand spectacle featuring the company's biggest stars, and you could bet your boots that a title would be up for grabs. The weekly storylines on Raw would leave you in such suspense that when it came time for the pay-per-view event, you just had to buy it. Yes, buy it! Back then, there was no WWE Network, so you had to order it through your cable TV or satellite provider. Fast forward to today, and sometimes it seems like they're just using the events to settle petty grudges that didn't really mean much in the first place. And sure, some may argue that the match quality today is better than what we had back then in the Attitude Era, but let's not forget that wrestling styles have evolved over time. The 80s had its own unique vibe. The late 90s had a wild energy. The mid-2000s brought their own brand of excitement, and today's scene has its own flavor. And you can't really say that the original TLC matches were bad, or that The Rock versus Triple H at Backlash 2000 didn't absolutely tear the house down, or that Triple H versus Cactus Jack at the Royal Rumble wasn't a barn burner. And what about HBK versus The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell? Was that bad in-ring action? Absolutely not. Not every match was 5 stars, but again, not every match today is 5 stars either. Plus, the Attitude Era brought us WrestleMania X7, which is thought to be one of the greatest WWF pay-per-views of all time from top to bottom. We had the match between Benoit and Angle. We got Austin and The Rock, and TLC 2. That was probably the best night of in-ring action the WWE ever put on. And what made it better was the stories heading into it, which if you really think about it, stories. That's what really drove the Attitude Era. Even if the matches were bad, the stories were always bangers. Just take the McMahon-Austin matches, for example. None of them were the pinnacle of wrestling, but it's still one, if not the best storylines wrestling ever gave us. And the crowd was so into it. Like, everyone talks about Money in the Bank 2011. Everyone talks about how that crowd made the pay-per-view great. Well, that crowd was at every single Attitude Era show. People cared so much that every week was must-see TV whether you were watching Raw or a pay-per-view. Pull up any show from that period on the network, and I really mean any show. You'll see just how into it the crowd was. You had fans literally going crazy for mid-carders, let alone the top guys. The crowd was flooded with fan signs. You just don't get that kind of energy anymore. In a way, the downfall of the Attitude Era was the downfall of the WWE. Austin turned heel, then left. The Rock became a movie star, then left. Vince became a less prominent on-screen presence. The end of WCW and ECW meant the WWE had no competition. This allowed them to not try as hard, and the shows started becoming less interesting. The fans started tuning out. Sure, the Ruthless Aggression Era had its moments. The PG Era was okay, but nothing comes near the absolute madness that was the Attitude Era. And that's what makes it the greatest time period in WWE history.